One principle, just like all my colleagues in Barisan Nasional, we hold to the principle that the next general elections must be the freest and the fairest in the country's history. We hold to the principle that the winner of the next general election must win with honor and the loser must lose with dignity. That means a fair, a level playing field, a fair election. Please, I know you support me, but please don't waste my time. Jangan buang masa saya. Ladies and gentlemen, I would put it to you, unlike S.Ambiga, that out of 8 of the demands, original demands of BERSIH 2.0, 7 of them have been met or are being addressed following from the PSC recommendations. Electoral roll is being cleaned up, reform of postal voting is taking place, use of indelible ink has been agreed upon. The only thing is minimum campaign period. We put 10 days and not 21 days. Free and fair access to the media. I can tell you tonight that S.Ambiga, as the Barisan Nasional Member of Parliament and as Ketua Pemuda, the Chief of UMNO Youth and Barisan Nasional Youth, I support all parties have the same amount of time on all national media, RTM, TV3, mainstream media, to tell the rakyat their policy platform and also their manifesto. Let's be fair about that. 6, strengthening public institutions, many reform initiatives within the PSC recommendation. 7, stopping corruption. We're supposed to sit down with the opposition within 3 months to discuss a code of conduct for governments, what they can and cannot do after Parliament is dissolved and after the state assemblies are dissolved, and to stop dirty politics. That's something that we can all agree upon. So 7 out of 8. And many of the recommendations by the PSC, the Parliamentary Select Committee, are time-bound. 45 days to clear up the 70 to 80,000 names, of which there are more than 50 voters in a single address. 3 months to discuss a code of conduct. 3 months to look into a system for overseas voting. So I put it to S.Ambiga, why? Why are you preempting these reforms and taking it out on the street yet again? Don't get me wrong. I respect your right to go out on the street. That is a freedom that I will defend for you. But I do not agree with your cause. I do not agree with your cause because you are preempting it, you are prejudging it, and more importantly, you are misrepresenting the people why they are going to go out. Now, she gave some facts and figures, and I hope I don't have time initially to dispute them, but I'm going to dispute 1 or 2 and tell you that there has been a misrepresentation of facts and figures. Now, this is a flyer that BERSIH Steering Committee 3.0 has published, has distributed around the world. And the flyer says, Malaysian electoral fraud by numbers. If you look at the press statements that S.Ambiga has come up with, the steering committee, it's fraud. Fraud being perpetuated by the government. Fraud being perpetuated by the Election Commission. That is prejudicial. Fraud. To put into the perspectives of people that this election is already not clean and it's not fair. This is my problem. My problem is not with your perjuangan, your struggle to make sure that there's clean elections. My problem is misrepresentation. Now let's just take a few examples. 42,000. She mentioned this great big 42,000 figure that the Election Commission themselves has come forward to say these are dodgy voters. I see 42,051 to be exact. 42,000 here. Fraud. Fraud, yeah? It says fraud. 42,051 cases. Let me explain a little bit the history of these 42,051 cases of voters who are considered dodgy or dubious. Last year in September, at the Election Commission's own initiative, own resourcefulness, they asked Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara, or NRD, National Registration Department, go through the entire electoral list, 12.5 million people. Check those names for which you have some suspicion that they are inactive in your files, in the NRD files. So the NRD went back, they checked the 12.5 million people, they came back and said, actually we've got 42,051 voters, which we don't really know, we don't really have updated records for them. So these 42,051 voters were considered dodgy voters. BERSIH will have you believe that they are fraudulent voters. If they were fraudulent voters, ladies and gentlemen, S.Ambiga, the EC would not have displayed them for 3 months. The EC displayed every single one of these 42,051 voters for 3 months, for everyone to see whether or not these voters are still alive. I remember in Parliament, Datuk Anwar, the leader of the opposition, stood up when we were debating the Election Offences Amendment, and he said, these 42,000 voters are not even citizens of Malaysia. That is the spin that they'll have you believe. That they're not even citizens of Malaysia. So I checked. As an MP, I did some research. I did my own research. I want to find out what is the situation the actual status of these 42,051 voters. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you this. 42,051 voters listed by the NRD and the Election Commission as voters who have suspect history and status in the NRD list. Now, Datuk Ambiga said it's fraudulent voters. She said the EC must use its power under section 25(2)(g) of the Election Regulations 2002. The Chief Registrar must strike these people out because they're fraudulent voters. This is the reason why you're going out on Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 months displayed. If within that 3 months, not a single soul from 42,051 voters came forward to say, hey, I'm still alive, I'd go with her. I'd say that to Ambiga, you're right. Let's strike out these voters. These voters are fraudulent. If within 3 months, 42,051 voters, tak ada seorang pun keluar dan cakap saya masih lagi hidup ataupun bapak saya dah meninggal, then I will believe that those are fraudulent voters. But this is listed as fraudulent voters. Ladies and gentlemen, in that 3 months, 1,248 cases came forward, 55% of which are still alive. They came forward and they said, hang on a second, I'm still here. Hitam binti Taib came forward, 98 years old. Teo Siam Ngoh came forward, 97 years old. Chu Siu Beng came forward, 97 years old. More than 700 people came forward to say, I'm still alive. Their only mistake, their only crime is that they didn't update their IC. You see the JPN, the NRD, if you do not update your IC, if you do not change your IC from the old blue one with the cap jari, Persekutuan Tanah-Tanah Melayu, or even if you didn't change it from the one after that, the 12-digit, the one that's laminated, you are considered inactive in their files. These people, their only crime was they didn't update their IC. Yet Datuk Ambiga says they are fraudulent voters and we must strike them out of the electoral roll. Ladies and gentlemen, if the EC struck them out of the electoral roll, the Election Commission would have done something illegal and they would have done something against the Constitution of Malaysia, which is to deny these people their constitutional right to vote. And out of the 45%, ladies and gentlemen, those were the people who were legitimate voters. There were also 45% of the 1,248 that came forward that they say they passed away. And this also answers the allegation that there are people 100 years old who are still on the electoral list. For example, Mingkilan B. Panabengan passed away in 1993, 18 years ago, born in 1990, but the next of kin did not report it to NRD, and as a result, the name is still there. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to remember, to strike out a name, whether or not the name is 150 years old, you must report that death to NRD. Another example, Kasum binti Talib, they didn't report for 8 years. Only last year, at the end of last year, the exercise come forward and say, my mother has passed away, can you take her off the list? So ladies and gentlemen, I come back to the point. Datuk Ambiga said, they are fraudulent voters. Fraud, that's why you must go out. But these 1,248 cases, I admit, they're not all 40,000, have come to prove that these people are still either alive or they existed as voters. And if you go with her argument that they are fraudulent voters, that you must strike it out and we must march, then you are actually putting your struggle on very, very shaky foundations. These are facts. These are facts. And ladies and gentlemen, there are many, many other cases which I will dispel throughout the night to show you that in fact there are perfectly legitimate reasons for all these anomalies which Dr. Kian Meng, which BERSIH have come up with. But the only problem I have is, and I asked Datuk Ambiga once again, Datuk Ambiga, out of the 40,803 left, in this particular example, now that I've told you that 1,248 cases came forward, can you tell me with absolute certainty that these 40,803 are fraudulent cases? Or is it possible? No. Is it probable, because 1,248 came forward, that they are still legitimate voters, or that they were legitimate voters that passed away? They may be in the pendalaman, in the interior. Their only crime was not to change their IC. So ladies and gentlemen, just one concrete example why the fundamental basis for which you, Datuk Ambiga, are telling people to go out on Saturday is not only untrue, but it's a misrepresentation of the facts if you look for it properly. Thank you very much.
you, Khairy.
Yes. May I answer?
Yes, 3 minutes, yeah?
Thank you. Right. I'll tell you where the fraud lies with this 42,000. It's with the lame excuse of the EC that they cannot do anything about it. That's not true. EC is busy removing and adding, let me tell you. Okay? And what they rely on, they say Rule 25(2)(g), which gives them the power to do it. Oh, we can't do it because it may violate the Constitution. So on the one hand, they violate the Constitution when they allow phantom voters and illegal immigrants, etc. to be registered. Then when it comes to removing, they suddenly are coy and respectful of the Constitution. Now, let me tell you, under the law, Regulation 13 gives them the power, let me read it quickly, that they're supposed to revise the supplementary roll once in every 3 months. For the purpose of revising the supplementary roll and to determine whether a person is there is a procedure. They actually have to make either a house-to-house or other inquiry, or he sends a notice and requiring information. And if he doesn't get information back within a specific period of time, he's entitled to strike out. Why are they not using that? Why are they hanging on and saying it's... And you notice they only talk about the 42,000. What about the 3 million? So I disagree that they can't do it. They're liberally doing it. Have you read cases of people who are... Is that it? No. Have you read cases of people who have voted and suddenly they're not on the roll anymore? How's that happening? How's that happening? Have you read cases of people overseas who never registered to vote and suddenly find their names on the list? Have you heard of those cases too? So what is the EC talking about? And I want an answer to all the other issues that have been raised by researchers in this area. It took 3 months to do that research. All those figures are formidable figures, and that's the tip of the iceberg. All I ask for is this. This is all I ask for. Put us in a room with the EC, and all MPs sit down, and then let us fight it out. We are ready to do that. Yesterday, we had a debate, and we invited the EC. BERSIH was there. The EC didn't turn up. Probably short notice, to be fair, but they didn't turn up. It's a shame, because we would have thrashed it up yesterday. But that's what I asked for. Now, sorry. Am I done? Well, that's what I have to answer, because they've talked about fraud. I need to tell you about fraud. The PSC recommended a royal commission of inquiry into Sabah. What do you think that's about? That's about fraud. That's about phantom voters. Don't tell me there's no fraud.
Alright, thank you very much, Datuk. Just before you go ahead, I'd just like to remind the audience, please refrain yourself from clapping or cheering while the speaker is speaking. Right? It's cutting time. It's cutting time for both of them. Alright, so Khairy, sorry, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. S.Ambiga. Let me just address, I think we have to disagree with this point, but let me just address why the EC will not use that power, precisely because of those 1,248 cases which appeared suddenly, which appeared as legitimate cases. And you can't dismiss that. You can't dismiss that. If you strike them off the list without even giving them a chance to come forward, and the EC, by the way, has given an assurance to continue to look for them. And one way of looking for them is also to allow them to vote, because many of these people have continued to vote. And it's just the only mistake that they've done. The only mistake that they've done is not updated the identity card. Now, let's go to some of the other concerns, okay? And I'll end by addressing your point about EC. Let's go to some of the other points. Now, this is based on your flyer. You say that 31,000 voters have been transferred from their constituencies. Now, that is the figure given by the opposition. I'm saying that when SPR did this study, 19,342 cases were transferred in a sense that their locality was corrected. I'll give you an example. Which addresses two issues. This is very crucial because it's mentioned in this flyer. The first is that 31,000 voters have been transferred out of 2008 state and parliamentary constituencies without their consent, including the incumbent Chief Minister of Selangor, who was transferred out of his own state, Tan Sri Khalid. Yeah? This particular case is very instructive. Tan Sri Khalid registered as a voter on the 1st of January 1985, using his then Petaling Jaya residence, Jalan 16/2, Petaling Jaya, which makes him a PJ Selatan voter in Don Bukit Gasing, if I'm not mistaken. In 2004, the SPR, the Election Commission, implemented a new system which is called the Electoral Geographic Information System. In normal speak, that's basically Google Earth, where they wanted to correct the locality. If you've been down Jalan Datuk Abu Bakar, from the Civil Service Golf Club down to the Castel roundabout to PJ section 16, don't shake your head. You will know that all the houses on the right going towards PJ are Petaling Jaya. All the houses on the left, where University Malaya are Wilayah Persekutuan. You know why? Go on Google Earth tonight. The border is on Jalan Datuk Abu Bakar. Yang Amat Muhammad Tan Sri Khalid's house is on the left. Jalan 16/2 is on the left. When they computed it in 1985, they put it in, the clerk said Jalan 16/2 must be Petaling Jaya. But when you look at Google Earth, when they corrected it, he is in Wilayah Persekutuan. Now, I fault the EC for one thing, not for correcting the locality, but for not informing Tan Sri Khalid. Now, EC informed all the political parties in constituents corrections of locality, but they did not inform the voter. And we told the EC, that's crazy, you must inform the voter, which they're doing now. But ladies and gentlemen, this is not transferring of voters. This is looking on Google Earth and realizing the border is actually on the road, his house is in Wilayah Persekutuan. And coming back to the 3 million voters, ladies and gentlemen, if a man like the Menteri Besar of Selangor has not even changed his voting address, I can tell you for a fact that he doesn't live in Jalan 16/2 anymore. He lives in Shah Alam, Menteri Besar's residence. Before that, he lived in Bukit Damansara. He is no longer a resident voter. He himself has moved out. If he himself has not bothered to change his address, what for regular?
Alright, thank you very much.